The moment my parents delivered their ultimatum still burns in my memory. Either invite Ashley to the wedding or we won't be there, my father declared, his voice unwavering. I stood frozen, unable to process how they could demand. I include the sister who had betrayed me by sleeping with Donnie just months before our engagement. Though Donnie and I had fought through the pain and rebuilt our relationship, my parents somehow believed family obligation trumped my feelings. Little did they know the choice I was about to offer would change everything. I never imagined my life would become a story about betrayal and ultimatums. At 29, I had what most people would consider a good life in Atlanta. My career as a marketing executive was thriving. I had just been promoted to lead a major account, and most importantly, I was engaged to marry Donnie, the man I had loved for 3 years. Donnie and I met at a friend's barbecue on a scorching July afternoon. He spilled lemonade on my white sundress, and instead of being upset, I laughed at the mortified expression on his face. That moment of genuine connection sparked something between us, and within weeks, we were inseparable. Donnie was everything I wanted in a partner: kind, ambitious, and supportive. He worked as an architect at a respected firm, and we bonded over our shared love of design and creativity. We had been planning our wedding for 6 months. The venue was booked, a charming restored barn on the outskirts of the city. I'd found my dress, a simple but elegant A-line that made me feel beautiful without being too princess-like. Everything was falling into place for our October wedding, with its autumn colors and romantic lighting. But our journey to this point hadn't been without significant pain. 8 months ago, my world imploded. I was using Donnie's phone to order takeout while he showered because mine had died. A text notification popped up from my sister Ashley. I can't stop thinking about that night. We need to talk about what happened. My stomach dropped as I opened the message thread and scrolled up. The exchanges between them were sparse but damning. References to a night they spent together. Guilt-ridden messages from Donnie saying it was a mistake. Ashley's responses fluctuating between regret and something that looked disturbingly like longing. When Donnie emerged from the bathroom, I was sitting on the couch, his phone in my hand, tears streaming down my face. The look on his face when he saw me told me everything I needed to know before he even spoke. "I can explain," he said, the most cliched words possible in that moment. The explanation came tumbling out. 3 months into our relationship, we had a major fight about his work schedule and took a 2-week break. During that time, he ran into Ashley at a bar downtown. Both of them had been drinking. One thing led to another, and they ended up going back to her place. "It was just one night," Donnie insisted, his voice cracking. "The biggest mistake of my life. As soon as it happened, I knew how wrong it was. When you and I got back together, I wanted to tell you, but I was terrified of losing you." Ashley agreed it was best to never mention it. The betrayal cut twice as deep because it involved my sister. Ashley was 25, 4 years younger than me, and we had always had a complicated relationship. Growing up, she was the one who effortlessly attracted attention, while I was more reserved. Our parents always seemed to make excuses for her behavior, attributing her wild streaks and occasional irresponsibility to her free spirit. I moved out of our shared apartment that same day. For weeks, I ignored Donnie's calls and texts. I cut off communication with Ashley entirely. The pain was overwhelming, a physical ache that made it hard to get out of bed in the morning. I took time off work, unable to focus on anything but the betrayal. After a month of separation, I agreed to meet Donnie for coffee. He came prepared with the name of a couples counselor and a letter detailing everything he was willing to do to rebuild trust. His sincerity broke through some of my defenses. We started the painfully slow process of reconstruction. For 5 months, we attended weekly therapy sessions. Donnie gave me complete access to his phone and social media. He checked in regularly without me asking. He patiently weathered my moments of doubt and anger. Most importantly, he respected my decision to cut Ashley out of my life completely. Ashley had tried to contact me multiple times. She sent texts, emails, even handwritten letters apologizing and begging for forgiveness. I couldn't bring myself to respond. The thought of facing her made me physically ill. My parents were aware of the situation but seemed to believe that since Donnie and I were working things out, I should forgive Ashley too. They didn't understand that rebuilding trust with a partner is different from forgiving a sister's betrayal. By the 6-month mark, Donnie and I had reached a new place in our relationship. The counseling had forced us to develop better communication skills. We had honest conversations about our fears and needs. In some ways, our relationship was stronger than before because of the work we'd put in. That's when Donnie proposed again, on a quiet evening at home, rather than with any grand gesture. He said he wanted to build a life with me based on honesty and mutual respect. I said yes, feeling certain about my choice despite our difficult past. We announced our engagement and resumed wedding planning with a new appreciation for what commitment really meant. I started to feel genuine excitement about our future. We found the perfect venue, selected a caterer, and began assembling our guest list. That's when things got complicated again. We were having dinner at my parents' house to discuss wedding details. My mother kept bringing up family traditions and talking about everyone being there. My father seemed distracted and uncomfortable. I noticed them exchanging glances throughout the meal. As we finished dessert, my father cleared his throat. "There's something we need to discuss," he said, his tone serious. "We think Ashley should be at the wedding." I felt like I'd been slapped. "That's not happening," I responded immediately. My mother reached for my hand. "Honey, she's your sister. This is a family event." "After what she did?" I asked incredulously. That's when my father delivered the blow that would change everything. "Either invite Ashley to the wedding, or we won't be there," he stated flatly, as if he were discussing a business transaction rather than his daughter's wedding day. I stared at them in disbelief, unable to process what I was hearing. My own parents were choosing my sister's comfort over my feelings on what was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. The betrayal felt even more profound than the original one. The silence that followed my father's ultimatum seemed to stretch for an eternity. Donnie reached under the table and squeezed my hand, his touch grounding me when I felt like I might float away from sheer disbelief. "You can't be serious," I finally managed to say. "We are completely serious," my father replied. His face had that immovable expression I recognized from childhood arguments, the one that signaled his mind was made up. "Family sticks together, no matter what. Ashley is your sister. Family sticks together," I repeated, my voice rising. Where was that philosophy when she betrayed me in the worst possible way? My mother jumped in, her tone placating. "What happened between Ashley, Donnie, and you was unfortunate, but people make mistakes. Ashley is absolutely devastated about what she did." "Devastated?" I couldn't hold back a bitter laugh. "She's had 8 months to be devastated. She betrayed me with my boyfriend, and then kept it secret for years until I found out by accident. She's your only sister," my mother continued, as if I hadn't spoken. "20 years from now, you'll regret not having her at your wedding. Family is forever." Donnie, who had remained silent until this point, finally spoke. "With all due respect," he said, his voice steady but firm, "what Ashley did was not just a mistake. It was a deliberate choice that hurt your daughter deeply. I take my share of responsibility for that pain, which is why I've spent months working to rebuild trust. But I support whatever decision she makes about her relationship with Ashley." My father turned his attention to Donnie, his expression hardening. "This is a family matter." "I am family," Donnie replied without hesitation, "or I will be in a few months. And my priority is supporting your daughter's well-being." "Ashley is truly sorry," my mother interjected. "She cries about this all the time. She's been seeing a therapist to work through her guilt. She just wants a chance to make things right." Something about my mother's words struck me as odd. "How do you know all this? Have you been talking to Ashley about us?" My parents exchanged glances again, confirming my suspicion. "She calls us every week," my father admitted. "She's really struggling with being cut off from you." "So she's been working on you for months," I realized aloud. "Crying and making herself the victim until you agreed to pressure me into forgiving her." "It's not like that," my mother protested. "Really? Because it seems exactly like that. Ashley does something terrible, and instead of holding her accountable, you find a way to make excuses for her. It's been the pattern our entire lives." My father's face flushed with anger. "You're being unfair. Ashley made one mistake. One massive, relationship-destroying mistake that showed complete disregard for me," I corrected. And now you're making an ultimatum that shows the same disregard. We're thinking of the big picture, my father insisted. Ashley is family. She's struggling emotionally right now. She needs her family's support. If you could just see how remorseful she is. I don't care how remorseful she is, I said, standing up from the table. She's not coming to my wedding. And if you choose her over me on my wedding day, that tells me everything I need to know about where I stand in this family. The drive home was tense and emotional. Donnie kept one hand on the wheel and the other holding mine as I alternated between anger and heartbreak. I can't believe they would do this, I said for perhaps the 5th time. My own parents. I'm so sorry, Donnie responded, his voice gentle. You don't deserve any of this. Part of me wonders if I should just give in to keep the peace, I admitted. Maybe having her there wouldn't be so bad if it means my parents would come. Donnie was silent for a moment. I'll support whatever you decide, he said finally. But I want you to think about what message it sends if you cave to this pressure. This is our wedding day. It should be filled with people who love and support us, not people who have hurt you deeply and never made proper amends. When we got home, we stayed up late into the night, talking through what family really means. Donnie shared stories about his own family's conflicts and resolutions. Unlike mine, his parents had always respected boundaries and allowed their children to manage their own relationships. Maybe family isn't just about blood, I suggested as we lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. Maybe it's about who shows up for you, who respects your feelings and supports your decisions. I think you're right, Donnie agreed. And for what it's worth, my family already thinks of you as one of us. Whatever happens with your parents, you won't be alone on our wedding day. The next morning, I woke up to a flood of notifications on my phone. My cousin Tara had tagged me in a family discussion on social media. Curious and still half asleep, I opened the app to find a thread about upcoming family events. Several relatives were discussing the wedding, making comments about how good it was that the sisters were reconciling and how mature Ashley was being about the whole situation. I sat bolt upright in bed. Donnie, wake up, I said, shaking his shoulder. You need to see this. Together we scrolled through the comments. It became clear that Ashley had been telling a completely different version of events to the extended family. In her narrative, she was the remorseful sister who had made one tiny mistake years ago and was now being graciously forgiven and welcomed back into the fold. She had somehow transformed my wedding into her redemption story. This is unbelievable, Donnie said, his face darkening as he read. She's completely twisting the situation. I felt a surge of anger unlike anything I'd experienced before. Ashley wasn't just trying to force her way into my wedding, she was actively reshaping the narrative to make herself look good at my expense. And based on the comments, my extended family was completely buying her version of events. That's it, I said, getting out of bed with sudden determination. I'm done being manipulated by her. This is our wedding, and I'm taking back control. The fallout from my parents' ultimatum spread like wildfire through our family. By Monday morning, my phone was buzzing constantly with messages from relatives I hadn't spoken to in months. Aunt Patty, my mother's sister, called while I was in a meeting. I just wanted to check on you, she said when I returned her call during my lunch break. Your mom mentioned there was some tension about the wedding. That's putting it mildly, I replied, picking at my salad. Well, you know what they say about being the bigger person, she continued, her voice taking on that familiar lecturing tone. No family is perfect, and weddings are a time to put aside differences. I realized she had no idea what had actually happened. Did my mom tell you why I don't want Ashley at the wedding? She mentioned some disagreement between you girls. Something about Donnie? I took a deep breath and explained the actual situation in clear terms. There was a long pause when I finished. Oh, Aunt Patty finally said. I didn't realize it was that serious. Similar conversations played out with other family members throughout the week. My grandmother called to remind me that blood is thicker than water. My uncle suggested that excluding Ashley would create a permanent rift in the family. My cousin Jessica texted that I should think about Mom and Dad's feelings too. The pressure wasn't limited to my side of the family. Donnie came home from work looking stressed on Wednesday. My cousin Jake worked at his architecture firm, and apparently, the situation had become a topic of office gossip. Jake asked me in the break room if it was true we were making Ashley wear a scarlet letter to the wedding, Donnie told me. loosening his tie with an exasperated sigh. Where would he even get that idea? Ashley. I answered immediately. She's spinning this narrative where we're the villains punishing her, instead of the reality where she's facing the natural consequences of her actions. The weekly Sunday dinner at my parents' house became an exercise in emotional endurance. My mother had prepared all my favorite foods, an obvious attempt at buttering me up. Throughout the meal, she dropped casual comments about family unity and forgiveness. "Remember how you girls used to make up so quickly after fights when you were little?" she said wistfully as she served dessert. "You never could stay mad at each other for long." "This isn't a childhood squabble over a borrowed sweater, Mom," I replied, setting down my fork. "This is a fundamental betrayal of trust." My father took a more direct approach. After dinner, he invited me into his study, something he used to do when he wanted to have a serious talk during my teenage years. "Your mother and I have been thinking about the wedding," he began, sitting behind his desk like a CEO about to negotiate a deal. "I'm not changing my mind about Ashley," I said immediately. He sighed. "We've put aside $20,000 for your wedding. That was the budget we discussed." I felt my stomach tighten. "Are you threatening to withhold that money if I don't invite Ashley?" "I wouldn't put it that way," he replied, not quite meeting my eyes. "I'm just saying that if this wedding isn't going to be the family celebration we envisioned, we might need to reconsider our investment." I stood up, my hands shaking. "Keep your money. I won't be bribed into having someone who betrayed me at my wedding." That night, I received a text from Ashley herself. It was the first direct communication I'd accepted from her in months. "I know you're still upset with me, and I understand," she wrote. "What I did was wrong, and I'll regret it forever. I just want a chance to be there on your special day and show you how much you mean to me. Please don't let one mistake erase a lifetime of sisterhood." The message felt calculated, like she'd drafted and redrafted it for maximum emotional impact. There was no acknowledgement of how her actions had affected me specifically or any mention of the pain she'd caused. It was all about her feelings, her regrets, her desires. I showed the text to Donnie. "Should I respond?" "That's up to you," he said carefully. "But remember, you don't owe her a response just because she reached out." I decided not to reply. The next day, Ashley sent another text, this one with a childhood photo of us attached. "Remember who we were before all this happened," she wrote. "I miss my sister." The manipulation was so transparent it was almost insulting. Still, I found myself feeling a complex mix of anger, guilt, and sadness. Part of me missed the sister I thought I had, before discovering what she was capable of. As the weeks passed, the pressure intensified. What should have been a joyful time of wedding planning became overshadowed by family drama. Each decision about flowers or music came with the weight of knowing my parents might not even attend. Donnie and I started arguing about small things, both of us stressed by the constant tension. One night, after bickering about table arrangements, I broke down in tears. "This isn't how planning our wedding was supposed to feel," I sobbed as Donnie held me. "Everything is being poisoned by this situation." "I know," he murmured, stroking my hair. "I'm so sorry." The anxiety began affecting other areas of my life. I had trouble sleeping and found myself distracted at work. During a meeting with an important client, I completely blanked on information I should have known by heart. My boss pulled me aside afterward, concerned. "Is everything okay? You haven't seemed yourself lately." I gave her a simplified version of the situation, and she was surprisingly understanding. "Family can be the best support system or the worst source of stress," she said. "Take some personal days if you need them." Just when I thought things couldn't get more complicated, I discovered something that pushed me to my breaking point. While visiting my parents' house to pick up some old photos for a wedding slideshow, I overheard my mother on the phone. "Yes, we told Ashley she should keep that date free," my mother was saying. "I know it's not officially resolved yet, but I'm sure once she calms down, she'll make the right decision. Family has to come first." My blood ran cold. My parents had already told Ashley she was invited to the wedding, despite my explicit refusal. They were operating on the assumption that I would eventually cave to their pressure. I left without the photos, too angry to even confront my mother about what I'd heard. When I told Donnie, he was as furious as I was. "They're completely disregarding your feelings and decisions," he said. pacing our living room. This has gone beyond simple family pressure. They're actively undermining you. That night, I had my first full-blown anxiety attack. It hit while I was trying to fall asleep. A sudden, overwhelming fear that made my heart race and my breathing shallow. Donnie had to talk me through it, holding me until the panic subsided. "Something has to change," he said as I finally calmed down. "We can't go on like this." I nodded against his chest, too exhausted to speak. The next morning, though, I woke up with a sense of clarity I hadn't felt in weeks. Donnie was right. Something had to change, and it wouldn't be my decision about Ashley. It was time to take back control of our wedding and our lives. The weekend after my anxiety attack, Donnie surprised me with packed bags and a reservation at a small bed and breakfast in the Blue Ridge Mountains, 3 hours north of Atlanta. "We need to get away from all this," he explained as we drove, the city skyline receding in the rearview mirror. "Just for a couple of days. No phones, no wedding planning, no family drama." The bed and breakfast was a charming Victorian house, nestled among towering pines, with wraparound porches and rocking chairs overlooking a misty valley. As soon as we arrived, I felt some of the tension drain from my shoulders. We spent that first afternoon hiking through the woods, the early autumn air crisp and invigorating. We talked about everything except the wedding and my family, rediscovering the ease of conversation that had first drawn us together. That evening, after a dinner of local trout and roasted vegetables at the town's only restaurant, Donnie suggested we make a fire in the small fireplace in our room. As we sat on the floor watching the flames, Donnie took my hands. "I want to talk about what's been happening," he said, his expression serious. "Not just with your family, but with us." My stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" "I've been watching you suffer under all this pressure, and it's killing me," he continued. "I feel partly responsible. If I hadn't made that terrible mistake with Ashley years ago, none of this would be happening now." "Donnie, we've been through this," I began, but he shook his head. "Please, let me finish. Yes, we've worked through that betrayal, and I'm endlessly grateful for your forgiveness. But I need to take responsibility for my part in creating this situation. And more importantly, I need to step up now." He reached for his bag and pulled out a notebook. "I've been thinking about this a lot, and I've come up with a plan." Over the next hour, Donnie outlined a comprehensive strategy for dealing with the family pressure. He had considered every angle, from financial contingencies if my parents withdrew their contribution to alternative venues if we needed to change our plans. "We have options," he emphasized. "We don't have to give in to your parents' manipulation, and we don't have to let them ruin our wedding." I stared at him, surprised by his thoroughness and determination. This was a side of Donnie I hadn't seen before, or at least not to this extent. Where was the man who sometimes avoided conflict and deferred tough conversations? "There's something else you should know," he said, closing the notebook. "I've been seeing a therapist on my own, in addition to our couples sessions." "You have?" This was news to me. After everything that happened with Ashley, I realized I needed to understand why I made such a destructive choice. I needed to become someone who would never hurt you like that again. Someone who could be a true partner, especially when things get tough. He looked into the fire, his profile illuminated by the warm glow. "I failed you once. I betrayed your trust in the worst possible way. I won't fail you again, especially not now when your own family is letting you down." Tears welled in my eyes. "You don't have to prove anything to me, Donnie. We've moved past that. This isn't about proving something to you," he replied, turning back to me. "It's about becoming the person I want to be, the husband you deserve." He took a deep breath. "Which brings me to another option we should consider. We could cancel the big wedding altogether." "Cancel it?" I echoed, surprised. "Not the marriage," he clarified quickly. "Just the formal event that's causing so much stress. We could elope, just the two of us. Or have a tiny ceremony with only the people who truly support us. Then maybe have a reception later, on our terms." The suggestion hung between us, radical yet strangely appealing. A wedding without the weight of family expectations or the shadow of past betrayals. "My family would support whatever we decide," Donnie added. "They've made that clear. They just want us to be happy." I thought about Donnie's parents, who had welcomed me warmly from the beginning. His mother had called me weekly during our separation, not to pressure me, but just to check that I was okay. His father had offered practical help with wedding preparations without trying to control any decisions. "I'll think about it," I promised. We spent the rest of the evening discussing other aspects of the plan, from establishing clearer boundaries with my parents to finding ways to protect our relationship from the ongoing stress. The next morning, over breakfast on the porch, Donnie revealed something that shocked me even more than his transformation into a strategic planner. "There's something else you should know," he said, setting down his coffee cup. "Ashley has been reaching out to me directly." I froze with my fork halfway to my mouth. "What? When?" "It started about 2 weeks ago. Just casual texts at first, asking how wedding planning was going. Then more direct messages suggesting we talk through things without you knowing." "Are you serious?" I felt a fresh wave of betrayal. "What did you say to her?" "Nothing. I haven't responded to a single message," Donnie assured me. "But I saved them all in case we need them. I think she's trying to create division between us, or maybe looking for a way to manipulate the situation further." I set down my fork, no longer hungry. "I can't believe she would try to contact you behind my back after everything that's happened." "I think it shows how desperate she is to be included in the wedding," Donnie observed, "and how little regard she has for your feelings or boundaries." That revelation solidified something in me. Seeing Ashley's continued manipulation attempts alongside Donnie's growth and support created a stark contrast. Where she was scheming and self-centered, he had become thoughtful and selfless. One was trying to undermine our relationship for her own purposes. The other was doing everything possible to strengthen it. As we packed to return to Atlanta that afternoon, I felt a new resolve forming. The weekend retreat had given me perspective and distance from the immediate pressure. Donnie's transformation from someone who had once betrayed me to my strongest advocate was profound. "Thank you for all of this," I said as we loaded the car. "For the weekend, for the plan, for standing by me through everything." Donnie pulled me into a tight embrace. "We're a team," he said simply, "and it's time we started acting like one." On the drive home, we continued refining our strategy. By the time we reached Atlanta, the outline of the choice we would present to my parents was taking shape. It wouldn't be what they expected. It wouldn't be what Ashley wanted, but it would be what we needed to move forward with our lives and our marriage on our own terms. The day after our return from the mountains, Donnie and I sat down with Dr. Marla, our couples therapist. We'd scheduled an emergency session to get her professional input on our developing plan. "I'm impressed by how thoroughly you've thought this through," Dr. Marla said after we explained our situation and strategy. "Family estrangement is never an easy decision to consider, but sometimes it's necessary for emotional health." "Is that what we're talking about?" I asked, the term estrangement making the situation feel suddenly more serious. "Cutting off my family?" "Not necessarily," Dr. Marla clarified. "What you're describing is establishing clear boundaries with consequences. You're not saying you never want to speak to your parents again. You're saying that if they continue to violate your boundaries regarding Ashley, there will be natural consequences for your relationship with them." She helped us refine our approach, emphasizing the importance of remaining calm and avoiding ultimatums that mirrored what my parents had done to me. "The key difference," she explained, "is that your parents are trying to force you to accept something harmful to accommodate someone who hurt you. You're simply protecting yourself from further harm." We spent the next hour discussing healthier family dynamics and what reasonable expectations in adult relationships look like. Dr. Marla provided us with resources on toxic family patterns and how to recognize manipulation tactics. "Remember," she said as our session concluded, "your wedding should be a celebration of your commitment to each other, not a stage for family drama or a venue for forced reconciliations." Over the next week, Donnie and I worked on articulating exactly what we wanted to communicate to my parents. We drafted and redrafted the choice we would present to them, careful to frame it in terms of our needs rather than accusations or demands. At the same time, I began reconnecting with friends I'd somewhat neglected during the drama. My college roommate Jenna listened sympathetically over lunch as I explained the situation. "I always thought your parents played favorites with Ashley," she commented, stirring her iced tea. "Remember when she wrecked your car senior year, and they helped her keep it secret from you for weeks? I had almost forgotten that incident." Ashley had borrowed my car without permission while I was away at a conference, gotten into a minor accident, and convinced our parents to help her fix it before I returned. When I eventually found out, they had downplayed it as just a little fender bender and suggested I was overreacting. "There's a pattern here," Jenna pointed out. "They've always expected you to accommodate Ashley's mistakes." My friend Tessa from work offered a similar perspective. "My sister and I have had our share of fights," she said during our coffee break. "But there are lines you just don't cross. Sleeping with your sister's boyfriend is definitely one of them. The fact that your parents are pressuring you, not her, says a lot about the family dynamic." These conversations reinforced what I was beginning to accept. The problem wasn't just about Ashley or this particular situation. It was about long-standing patterns in my family where my feelings and boundaries were considered less important than keeping the peace or catering to my sister's needs. Meanwhile, Donnie and I started making practical adjustments to our wedding plans. We researched smaller venues as a backup and revised our budget to account for potentially losing my parents' contribution. My parents offered to help, Donnie told me one evening as we reviewed our spreadsheets. They were very clear that it's a gift, not a loan, and comes with no strings attached. I was touched by his parents' generosity, but hesitant about accepting. "Are you sure? That's a lot of money." "They want us to have the wedding we want," Donnie assured me. "Not one dictated by your parents' conditions." We decided to hold off on making any firm decisions about their offer until after talking with my parents. As our strategy took shape, I found myself processing complex feelings about my relationship with Ashley. Despite everything, there were moments when I missed the sister I thought I had before all this happened. Childhood memories of building forts together or staying up late to watch scary movies surfaced unexpectedly. "It's okay to grieve the relationship you thought you had," Dr. Marla assured me during a solo session. "That doesn't mean you need to expose yourself to further hurt by allowing her back into your life before she's demonstrated real change." The night before our planned meeting with my parents, I had trouble sleeping. Around midnight, I got up and went to the kitchen for some water. Donnie followed a few minutes later, finding me staring out the window at the city lights. "Second thoughts?" he asked gently. I shook my head. "Not about our plan. Just sad that it's come to this. I always thought my parents would be unquestionably on my side when it really mattered." Donnie wrapped his arms around me from behind. "I know. It's their loss if they can't see what an amazing daughter they have." The next morning I decided to stop by my parents' house to pick up a jewelry box I'd left there, containing some pieces I was considering wearing for the wedding. My mother was out at her book club, but I had a key and didn't think my father would be home either. As I was searching through my old bedroom, I heard my father's study door open. Not wanting to get pulled into another argument when I wasn't prepared, I stayed quiet, hoping to grab the jewelry box and leave without him noticing. As I opened my closet, I spotted a shopping bag on the floor that hadn't been there during my last visit. Curious, I peeked inside and found a receipt for a dress from an expensive boutique downtown. The receipt was in my mother's name, but the dress size was Ashley's. At the bottom was a handwritten note, "For A's special role in the wedding." My hands trembled as I carefully replaced everything exactly as I'd found it. Not only were my parents assuming I would cave to their pressure, but they were actively preparing for Ashley's participation in my wedding without my knowledge or consent. That discovery was the final piece I needed. Any lingering doubts about our plan vanished. My parents weren't just expressing a preference or making a request. They were deliberately orchestrating a situation where I would feel I had no choice but to include Ashley. I left without the jewelry box, my mind clear and resolved. When I told Donnie what I'd found, his jaw tightened, but he nodded as if this confirmed what he already suspected. "Are you ready for tomorrow?" he asked, referring to our planned meeting with my parents. "More than ready," I replied, a strange calm settling over me. It's time they understood that I'm not going to be manipulated anymore. We arranged to meet my parents at Riverside Cafe, a neutral location with enough privacy for a difficult conversation. Donnie and I arrived 15 minutes early to secure a quiet corner table away from other diners. As we waited, I rehearsed our talking points in my head. My palms were sweaty, and despite the air conditioning, I felt flushed. Donnie reached under the table and took my hand, giving it a reassuring squeeze. Remember, he murmured. We've thought this through. We're doing the right thing. My parents arrived exactly on time. My father in his customary business casual attire. My mother wearing the pearl necklace she always chose for important occasions. They greeted Donnie with stiff politeness, and me with cautious smiles. It's good you called this meeting, my father said as they settled into their seats. We have a lot to discuss with the wedding only 2 months away. Yes, we do, I agreed, taking a deep breath to steady my nerves. A server came to take our drink orders, providing a momentary reprieve from the tension. Once she left, my mother leaned forward eagerly. I was thinking about the seating arrangements, she began, pulling out a small notebook. If we put Ashley at table 3 with your cousins rather than at the family table, would that be a compromise you could live with? I exchanged glances with Donnie. My parents were still operating on the assumption that Ashley's attendance was a foregone conclusion, with only the details to be negotiated. Before we discuss any arrangements, I said carefully, Donnie and I need to address the ultimatum you gave us. My father frowned. It wasn't an ultimatum. It was a statement of fact. We can't attend a family wedding where one of our daughters is excluded. That is the definition of an ultimatum, Dad, I pointed out, working to keep my voice steady. And it's put us in an impossible position. Not impossible, my mother interjected. All you need to do is forgive your sister. She's made one mistake, a mistake that deeply hurt me, I reminded her. And her actions since then have shown no real understanding of that hurt. She's been trying to manipulate the situation, even contacting Donnie behind my back. My parents looked surprised at this revelation. My father recovered quickly. She's just trying to make amends any way she can. No. She's trying to force her way back into my life without doing the actual work of rebuilding trust, I countered. And you're enabling that behavior. The server returned with our drinks, and we paused the conversation until she left again. I took a sip of water, gathering my thoughts before continuing. Donnie and I have given this a lot of thought, and we've come to a decision. We're not going to invite Ashley to our wedding. Then we won't be there, my father stated flatly, exactly as I'd expected. I understand that's your choice, I replied, surprised by how calm I felt now that the moment had arrived. But before you make it final, I want you to understand what it means for our relationship going forward. My mother looked confused. What do you mean? If you choose not to attend our wedding because we won't invite someone who betrayed me in one of the worst possible ways, that will fundamentally change our relationship. This isn't just about one day. It's about whether you respect me as an adult, capable of making my own decisions about who I want in my life. My father's expression darkened. Are you threatening to cut us off if we don't come to your wedding? No, I said, meeting his gaze directly. I'm explaining the natural consequences of your choice. If you demonstrate that you value Ashley's comfort over my well-being on one of the most important days of my life, that tells me where I stand with you. And I'll adjust my expectations of our relationship accordingly. This is absurd, my father blustered, his face reddening. We're your parents. You can't just decide to limit contact with us because we want both our daughters at a family event. Actually, I can, I replied, still keeping my voice level. I'm an adult. I get to decide who I spend time with and on what terms. Just like you get to decide whether to attend my wedding. My mother's eyes filled with tears. You don't mean that. You're just upset right now. I'm not just upset, Mom. I'm setting a boundary. And how you respond to that boundary will shape our relationship moving forward. Donnie had remained silent until this point, letting me take the lead as we'd planned. Now he spoke, his tone respectful but firm. We want you both at our wedding. You're important to us. But we need you to understand that this is our day, and we get to decide who shares it with us. Ashley isn't welcome, not because we're being vindictive, but because her presence would make it impossible for us to fully enjoy the celebration. My father turned to Donnie, his expression hardening. You're the cause of this whole situation. If you hadn't slept with Ashley in the first place, none of this would be happening. You're right, Donnie acknowledged, surprising my father. I made a terrible mistake years ago, and I've worked hard to make amends and rebuild trust. I've taken responsibility for my actions. Ashley hasn't done the same, and neither have you by trying to force her presence on us. My mother wiped her eyes. We just want the family to be whole again. The family isn't whole now, I pointed out. It broke when Ashley betrayed me, and when you decided her feelings were more important than mine. Forcing us together at my wedding won't fix that. It will only cause more damage. I took another drink of water, then continued. We've made other adjustments to our wedding plans. We're no longer counting on your financial contribution. We've found ways to cover the costs ourselves. This clearly caught them off guard. The financial leverage they thought they had was suddenly gone. That's not necessary, my father said quickly. Our gift stands regardless. No, it doesn't, I disagreed. You made it clear that the money came with conditions. We're not accepting conditional gifts. An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. Finally, my mother spoke, her voice trembling. There's something you should know. Something that might help you understand why family unity is so important right now. She glanced at my father, who nodded slightly. Ashley is pregnant, my mother said. About 3 months along. She's going to need her family around her, especially her sister. I felt a jolt of surprise at this news, quickly followed by suspicion about its timing and purpose in this conversation. I'm sorry, but how does Ashley's pregnancy change anything about what happened between us? I asked. She's going to be a single mother, my father explained. The father isn't in the picture. We're trying to pull together as a family to support her through this. And you think my wedding is the perfect opportunity to force a reconciliation because of this new development? I asked, unable to keep the edge from my voice. We're going to have a grandchild, my mother said, as if this explained everything. Don't you want to be an aunt? To be part of your niece or nephew's life? I looked at Donnie, who gave me a subtle nod of support. We had discussed various scenarios, but this specific revelation wasn't one we'd anticipated. Still, the underlying dynamic was the same, using emotional leverage to override my boundaries. Ashley's pregnancy doesn't erase what happened, I said firmly. And using her condition or her child as emotional manipulation to force me to include her in my wedding only makes things worse, not better. My father pushed back his chair abruptly. I can see this conversation is going nowhere. You've clearly made up your mind to be unforgiving. This isn't about forgiveness, I corrected him. It's about boundaries and respect. I hope you'll reconsider your position about attending our wedding. The invitation is open to you both, but not to Ashley. That's our final decision. Then our decision stands as well, my father replied, standing up. Come on, Margaret. We're leaving. My mother hesitated, looking torn. For a moment, I thought she might stay, might try to find some middle ground. But decades of deferring to my father's judgment won out. She gathered her purse and stood. Please think about what you're doing, she said, her voice breaking. Once you go down this road, it's hard to come back. I have thought about it, I assured her. More than you know. The question is whether you've thought about what you're doing by choosing Ashley over me. Again. They left without another word. My father's back rigid with anger, my mother wiping away tears. Donnie and I remained at the table, the weight of what had just happened settling over us. Are you okay? He asked after a moment. I took a deep breath, assessing my feelings. There was sadness, certainly, and a sense of loss. But underneath that was something else. A certainty that we had done the right thing, and a strange sense of liberation. I'm okay, I said, surprised to find it was true. It hurts, but it's a clean hurt, if that makes sense. Like setting a broken bone so it can heal properly. Donnie nodded, understanding. What do you think about the pregnancy news? I don't know if it's true or just another manipulation tactic, I admitted. But either way, it doesn't change my decision about the wedding. If anything, it makes me more certain we're doing the right thing by establishing clear boundaries now. We paid the bill and left the restaurant, stepping into the warm afternoon sunlight. As we walked to our car, I felt lighter somehow, despite the emotional weight of the confrontation. For the first time in months, our wedding felt like it was truly ours again, not a battlefield for family politics or a stage for Ashley's redemption story. What now? Donnie asked as we drove away. Now we plan our wedding, I replied, taking his hand. Our way. For the first time since my parents' ultimatum, I felt a sense of peace as we finalized our wedding plans. Without the looming pressure to include Ashley, decisions about flowers, Music and table settings became joyful rather than stressful. Donnie and I rediscovered the excitement that had been overshadowed by family drama. We didn't hear from my parents for nearly a month after our meeting at the cafe. I had moments of sadness, particularly when passing milestone moments in the wedding planning that traditionally would have involved my mother. Selecting my final accessories without her input felt strange, a mixture of freedom and loss. Donnie's parents stepped in with remarkable sensitivity, offering support without trying to replace my parents' role. His mother helped me address invitations one evening, carefully avoiding any mention of my family's absence. "Whatever happens," she told me as we sealed the last envelope, "you're already part of our family. That won't change." Her words brought tears to my eyes. "Thank you," I managed to say. "That means more than you know." We sent formal invitations to my parents despite their stated intention not to attend. It was important to me that the door remain open, that any estrangement be their choice rather than mine. As the wedding date approached, I found myself thinking about family in new ways. The friends who rallied around us, the co-workers who offered practical help, Donnie's relatives who welcomed me unconditionally all demonstrated that family could be defined by love and respect rather than just blood ties. 3 days before the wedding, when I had almost resigned myself to my parents' absence, they appeared at our apartment door unannounced. My mother looked tired, with new lines around her eyes. My father seemed smaller somehow, less imposing than I remembered. "Can we come in?" my mother asked, her voice uncertain. I hesitated, then stepped aside to let them enter. Donnie was at work, and part of me wished he were there for support. Another part was glad for the privacy of this moment. We sat awkwardly in the living room, the silence heavy between us. Finally, my father spoke. "We've been doing a lot of thinking since our last conversation," he began, his usual authoritative tone noticeably absent, "and talking with Pastor Jim at church." I waited, unsure where this was going. "We made a mistake," my father continued, each word seeming to cost him considerable effort. "Several mistakes, actually." My mother reached for my hand. "We failed to protect you when you were hurt. Instead of supporting you, we asked you to accommodate the person who hurt you. Ashley is our daughter too," my father added, "but that doesn't excuse what she did or our response to it. We should have respected your boundaries." I felt tears forming but blinked them away. "What changed your minds?" I asked, not quite ready to accept this apparent reversal. My parents exchanged glances. "Pastor Jim helped us see things from your perspective," my mother explained. "And we realized we were repeating patterns from the past, always expecting you to be the reasonable one, the one who gives in." "Ashley has been staying with us," my father said. "At first, she told us what we wanted to hear, that she was truly remorseful and just wanted to make amends. But as the wedding got closer, her behavior changed. She became demanding, insisting that being in the wedding was her right as your sister. She had a dress picked out and everything," my mother added. "When we suggested that maybe we should respect your wishes, she had a complete meltdown. It was illuminating." "Is she really pregnant?" I asked, the question that had lingered in my mind. "Yes," my father confirmed. "Though the situation isn't exactly as we presented it. The father is involved, just not committed to a relationship with Ashley. It's complicated. We used her pregnancy as emotional leverage," my mother admitted. "That was wrong of us." I took a deep breath, processing this unexpected accountability. "Thank you for acknowledging that. It means a lot." "We'd like to come to the wedding," my father said, "if you'll still have us. We understand completely about Ashley. She won't be there, and we won't mention her or try to change your mind. We miss you," my mother added simply, "and we don't want to miss one of the most important days of your life." I studied their faces, looking for signs of manipulation or hidden agendas. All I saw was genuine regret and hope. "I need to talk to Donnie," I said finally. "This affects him too." Of course, my father agreed immediately. "We owe him an apology as well." They left shortly after, promising to respect whatever decision we made. When Donnie came home, I told him about the visit and their apparent change of heart. "What do you think?" I asked. "Should we believe them?" Donnie considered the question carefully. People can change when they're confronted with the consequences of their actions. The fact that they came to apologize in person is significant. But ultimately, It's your call. They're your parents. That night, we invited my parents over for dinner. The conversation was awkward at first, but gradually eased as my parents made genuine efforts to engage with Donnie and express interest in our lives. My father formally apologized to Donnie for blaming him for the entire situation. "I was unfair to you," he admitted. "You made a mistake years ago, but you've clearly worked to make amends and be a better man. I respect that." By the end of the evening, we had reached a new understanding. My parents would attend the wedding, without Ashley, and with no further discussion of including her. In return, I agreed to consider rebuilding a relationship with my sister at some point in the future, on my own timeline and terms. "Not now," I clarified. "Maybe not for a long time. But I won't say never." That seemed to give my mother particular relief. While she had finally acknowledged my right to set boundaries with Ashley, I could tell she still hoped for eventual reconciliation. Our wedding day dawned clear and bright. The October sky a brilliant blue above the rustic barn venue we had chosen. Getting ready in the bridal suite with my friends, I felt a mix of emotions: excitement, love, lingering traces of sadness about the family fractures, but overall, a profound sense of rightness about marrying Donnie. My mother joined us for the final preparations, helping to secure my veil with hands that trembled slightly. "You look beautiful," she whispered, her eyes bright with tears. The ceremony itself was everything we had hoped for. Walking down the aisle on my father's arm, seeing Donnie waiting for me with an expression of pure joy, exchanging vows we had written ourselves, I felt the painful journey of the past year transforming into something valuable. Without the trials we had faced, we might never have discovered the depth of our commitment or learned to stand together against outside pressures. At the reception, my father gave a brief but heartfelt toast. "To new beginnings," he said, raising his glass, "and to a marriage built on honesty, respect, and unwavering support." I caught his eye across the room, acknowledging the deeper meaning in his words. We had all learned difficult lessons about those values. Donnie and I shared our first dance to the song that had been playing when we met at that fateful barbecue years ago. As we moved across the floor, he pulled me close. "Happy?" he asked. "Completely," I answered, and meant it. 1 year later, we celebrated our first anniversary with a quiet dinner at home. So much had changed in 12 months. We had moved to a new apartment with a spare bedroom that would soon become a nursery for the baby we were expecting in the spring. My relationship with my parents had slowly but steadily healed, built on new foundations of mutual respect and clearer boundaries. Ashley and I had exchanged a few cautious texts, beginning the long process of addressing the damage between us. I had met her son, my nephew, a bright-eyed baby who bore no responsibility for the complicated adult relationships around him. While I wasn't ready for a close sisterly bond, I had opened the door to a carefully managed connection. Most importantly, Donnie and I had grown even stronger as a couple. The challenges we had overcome together had forged a partnership that could weather any storm. As we finished our anniversary dinner, Donnie raised his glass of sparkling cider in a toast. "To choices," he said, "the hard ones that change everything." I smiled, touching my glass to his, and to second chances, earned through genuine change. We had learned that true family isn't defined by unconditional acceptance of harmful behavior, but by mutual respect, honest accountability, and the courage to establish healthy boundaries. Sometimes the most loving choice you can make is to stand firm in what you need, even when it's difficult. And sometimes, the family you build through conscious choice is stronger than the one you're born into. Have you ever had to set a difficult boundary with someone you love? How did they respond? And what did you learn from the experience? I'd be grateful if you would share your thoughts in the comments. And if this story resonated with you, please consider liking, subscribing, and sharing it with others who might find it helpful. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and I wish you strength and wisdom in navigating your own family relationships.